So in a $3.6 billion deal, Sony is going to acquire Bungie, who is the developers behind the original Halo series and Destiny. What's also interesting about this deal is that Bungie is not going to be a part of the PlayStation Studios umbrella. They're going to be their own separate publisher under Sony. So now pretty much it's going to be that Sony's gaming branch, which is SIE, is going to have two different publishers, one being PlayStation Studios and one being Bungie. And with that, they're going to have creative freedom and can publish and develop games for whatever platforms they wish. And of course, that's really good news for Destiny 2 players who don't play on PlayStation platforms. But that's really about it for the news portion of this video. Now I want to get into my thoughts about this acquisition and just gaming acquisitions recently altogether. So if you just wanted to see the news, that's kind of it. But if you want to hear my full opinions and thoughts about it, continue watching. So basically, there's been a lot of big gaming acquisitions lately. The gaming industry has been making acquisitions pretty much since the beginning of time. That's what a lot of these companies do. They'll merge and acquire and grow and all this stuff. It's just kind of how big business works. And then Microsoft started off, I think it was E3 2017, maybe it's 18, I'm not quite sure. But I know there was one E3 where they announced they bought like 9 different developers or something like that. No, they got like Ninja Theory and Obsidian and like Turn 10 and a bunch of other studios. But then what really kicked things off is in 2020 when Microsoft announced that they were acquiring ZeniMax Media, which is Bethesda. That was like the first time a console manufacturer bought like another publisher. That was never done before, at least not in a major way. And so now everyone's saying that Sony needs to respond, but they haven't really responded in a way like that. They have made several acquisitions since that, though. They bought like Housemarque and Bluepoint and Firesprite and Nixies and now Bungie. So they're making a lot of acquisitions and growing themselves as well, but still nothing compared to like Microsoft is doing, because now they also bought Activision Blizzard. But I feel like it's getting to the point where this like gaming conglomeration that's been happening, you know, like in what, 10 years everything's going to be owned by either Tencent, Microsoft, Amazon, Sony, or Nintendo. But Nintendo doesn't really make big purchases like that. And even Sony doesn't really make too big purchases. A lot of their purchases make a lot of sense. Pretty much every studio they bought, except for like a select few, they had some sort of relationship with already. So like devs like Naughty Dog, like they made Crash Bandicoot for them, made Jak and Daxter games for them, and I think they bought them after maybe Jak 1, maybe Jak, I don't remember exactly which Jak. If you look at like Insomniac, they made Spyro, then Ratchet, then Resistance, and even Spider-Man. All those games were just second-party exclusives. And then Sony finally bought them after forever. That was been a thing some people wanted them to do since like the big PS2 era. And also more recent purchases like Bluepoint or Housemarque make sense because they did a lot of work with them as well. And it just keeps going and going. They had that kind of relationship with Sucker Punch. They had that kind of relationship with Guerrilla. They even had that kind of relationship with like Media Molecule. And some of the other studios they bought that I'm like, okay, that was kind of weird, is like Nixies, who does PC ports, and then Firesprite, who we know now is working on the Horizon VR game and I guess Twist Metal reboot. But when you think about it, Firesprite actually does have a history with Sony because a lot of the people who made up that team was Sony Liverpool, who made the Wipeout games. Now, if you contrast that with like what Microsoft is doing, so when they first started announcing like a bunch of all the smaller studios, none of them necessarily had a huge tie with like Microsoft in any exclusivity way, but those were like smaller indie studios and they were probably looking to be bought out because game development is expensive, and I'm sure it's really hard to be an independent studio, especially trying to make more AAA scale games. I'm talking about devs like In Exile, Ninja Theory, Double Fine, Compulsion Games, Obsidian. All these devs were like kind of bigger indie studios that were like making pretty big games for other publishers, but that's probably not a very sustainable business model, I guess. I mean, it really depends, I guess, but you know, I think that's why those studios were bought out, not necessarily because they had a long Xbox history. But then like Bethesda, I've seen people argue that like you can associate a lot of Bethesda stuff with Microsoft because like Morrowind came to Xbox and Oblivion was on Xbox only for a while. Even like early like PC stuff like Doom and Wolfenstein, you know, you need to play that on DOS, which was a Microsoft product. And I can kind of see that, but the thing is, they've always been releasing games everywhere. So they were a pretty big supporter of everybody. And now it sucks that they're kind of going to be exclusive to just PC and Xbox. But then Activision Blizzard, it's like, I mean, Blizzard I mostly associate with PC. Activision, like with Call of Duty, I never associated with like Xbox or PlayStation. I just associated it with gaming. And I know as of right now, they said at least the next 3 Call of Duties are still going to come out on PlayStation. But like, what are they going to do when the fourth Call of Duty to come out? Is that going to be Xbox exclusive? Because that seems kind of shitty to just take one of the biggest gaming franchises ever and just make it onto one platform when it used to be on everywhere. The one thing I also hate about this is, like, every time Microsoft makes one of these purchases, everyone's like, Sony needs to retaliate by buying Square Enix, they need to buy Sega, they need to buy Capcom, they should buy Konami. No, we don't need more giant corporate acquisitions. We don't need, like, all the gaming to be owned by, like, 3 companies. What I honestly feel like, I wish Microsoft would do to Activision and Bethesda what Sony's doing to Bungie. They're acting as a separate, independent publisher, just owned by the same company. I don't know. I don't really have all my thoughts really thought out on this. I'm just kind of going off cuff and going off how I feel. Yeah, that's pretty much my basic thoughts on all these big corporate acquisitions. I think it's gonna get bad eventually. It's gonna be really annoying in like 10 years when everything's either owned by Xbox or Sony. I guess we'll see what happens. Make sure you like, share, comment, and subscribe, and I'll see you guys in the next one.